Hi, my name is Akila Natasha binti Zanman.
My name Ayuni Aribah binti Arjunaid.
Hi, my name is Nur Nazihah binti Sabtu.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Nur Sharika binti Masri.
Since the existence of the COVID-19 outbreak, we can see the volatile currency market conditions. Therefore, the impact of COVID-19 on the world market has been demonstrated in the foreign exchange sector. The impact of COVID-19 on any part of the world economy can be divided into three categories. First, demand shock. A demand shock is a temporary disruption in which an unforeseen circumstance causes demand for a product or services to suddenly increase or decrease. For example, since COVID-19 exists, everyone should quarantine themselves to prevent the spread of COVID-19 disease. Nationwide implementation of the movement control ordinance, tourism restrictions, and a global disruption in the core of consumer goods and services, tourism, hospitality, and so on. When the demand for a good or service increases sharply, the price of the good or service also increases because the supplier cannot cope with the increased demand. In economic terms, this shifts the demand curve to the right. When demand drops sharply, the opposite happens. There is too much supply for the demand. Shortage occurs and price rise due to a positive demand shock, a sudden increase in demand. Meanwhile, a negative shock is a decrease in demand that leads to excess supply and lower prices. As we all know, strict containment measures were taken in many countries at the beginning of the pandemic to interrupt transmission of COVID-19 as soon as possible. The measures such as full or partial lockdowns, physical distancing rules, bans on public gatherings, and border closures resulted in a sudden halt to the movement of people and non-essential business operations. This manifested themselves in severe production disruption and a collapse in demand, especially in the consumer and tourism sectors. As a result, the profitability of businesses fell drastically. Second, a supply shock. Supply shock is anything that reduces the capacity of the economy to produce goods and services at given prices. Supply shocks can result from any unexpected event that changes the supply of a product or goods and leads to a sudden change in price. Supply shocks from pandemics are usually considered labor supply shocks. Several studies from before COVID-19 have focused on the direct loss of labor due to death and illness, although some have also pointed to the potentially large impact of school closures, which consider among other shocks the reduced labor supply due to mortality, morbidity due to infections, and morbidity due to the need to care for affected family members. For example, we can see at pandemic COVID-19, in prolonged closures, it becomes a challenge to ensure that students return to school when it reopens. In addition, school closures combined with increased hardship for poor families can also increase the risk of child labour. Although there is no national survey on child labour, various studies and empirical evidence suggest that child labour already occurs in certain areas in both rural and urban areas of the country, particularly in Sabah and Sarawak. Third, a financial shock. A financial shock comes from the financial sector of the economy. Therefore, financial shocks can also affect any other sector of the economy, as modern economies rely heavily on liquidity and credit flows to manage normal operation and wage. Financial shocks are the main form of nominal shocks, although their impact can clearly have several effects on real economic activity such as stock market crashes, liquidity increases in the banking system, unpredictable change in the monetary policy, or rapid currency depreciation. For example, stock on the Bursa Malaysia exchange fell during the outbreak as investors sold securities due to the expected economic impact of the virus, which is expected to last until June 2020. Recently, however, stock in Malaysia fell as the government again announced nationwide total lockdown to curb the rapidly rising daily COVID-19 infection in the country.
Next, we will discuss about two main sources of economic damage in Malaysia amidst in the pandemic COVID-19. The epidemic also had a negative impact on the numerous important industries, including entertainment, market, retail, hospitality, and tourism. Two main sources that we will discuss are by using these two main sources of economic. Firstly, the economy. This is because COVID-19 will have a significant impact on the ringgit value in Malaysia. As a result, panic selling by investors seeking to avoid trading in the current charting market. In Example, airlines that form the tourist industry were severely affected by the decline of about 63% in Asia and approximately 39% in Malaysia. By 27 March 2020, on the other side, the glove manufacturer stock flourished with stock like the top glove, the world's biggest gantry producer, climbing by around 30% by 27 March 2020 in common awareness to prevent contact with your naked hand owing to the COVID-19. Next is tourism. Tourism also gives the big impact to the sources of the economy in Malaysia. It is recognized that Malaysia's tourism sector plays a key role in boosting economic growth by promoting external goods and services spending in Malaysia. If tourists decline continually, some of the tourist industry will be forced to help due to unbearable losses and incapable of paying employees' wages. Simultaneously, other non-essential sectors had to stop their operation during the MCO. For example, in order to manage the spread of COVID-19 in Malaysia, the economic activities in manufacturing and the building industry will head back. This is why government financial support to the sector concerned is important. This is consistent with Canadian approaches to government role play in the economic recession. Is concerning since Malaysia tourist industry is a key source of foreign money in the country's economy.
C. The ringgit depreciated to its weakest level against the US dollar at 4.2957 so far today after the US dollar strengthened on demand for haven currencies at the time when the COVID-19 pandemic. Explain the impact of weaker ringgit Malaysia to Malaysian economy. The first impact is export growth. The depreciation of the currency will weaken the Malaysian ringgit, which in turn can stimulate business in Malaysia. This is because when the currency declines, it is more beneficial for the foreign market to buy goods made in Malaysia, because they can get a cheaper price by using their currency which has a higher exchange rate. Increased demand for domestic products will result in more profit to certain sectors. Export-based business in the national market will be able to see that a weaker ringgit will benefit as they can enjoy higher demand and will boost the Malaysian economy. However, the reduction of Malaysian ringgit had more of negative than the positive impact. Among the negative impact is the drop in crude oil prices. Crude oil prices are inversely proportional to the value of the US dollar. So, when the US dollar rises, the price of oil will fall and cause the value of the Malaysian ringgit to also decline. The decline in crude oil price will have a negative effect on the Malaysian economy as Malaysia is a crude oil exporter. Imported goods sold within Malaysia will also become more expensive as Malaysia spends more money to pay for the goods due to falling ringgit exchange rate. This causes the price of imported goods or containing high important components to increase. Suppliers of imported goods will not bear the loss as a result of the depreciation of the Malaysian ringgit. In fact, they will pass the burden on to customers. When the price of imported goods is expensive, demand will decrease and at the same time the Malaysian economy will also decline. D. Acknowledging the significant economic impact of the pandemic COVID-19. Malaysia adopted several comprehensive approaches which include the deployment of fiscal, monetary, financial and other relevant measures during the crisis to support the growth of Malaysia gross domestic product (GDP). Differentiate between the objective of fiscal injection approach and monetary approach. Fiscal policy is a government policy that changes the pattern of government spending and the taxation system for the economic stability of the country. The goal of fiscal policy is to achieve full employment and economic stability. Moreover, it is to distribute the income and wealth of the country to reduce the disparity gap between the rich and the poor. If it want to increase demand and economic development, the government will lower tax and increase spending, thus leading to a higher budget deficit. Meanwhile, if the government wants to lower demand and reduce inflation, the government can increase tax and lower spending, thus leading to a lower budget deficit. Monetary policy is the central bank measures to influence the country's economic activities by controlling the money supply and interest rates. It aims to control the supply of money and credit in the economy to achieve macroeconomic goals of achieving full employment, achieving general price level stability, which is inflation, improving the balance of payment and increasing economic growth. During inflation, contractionary monetary policy is implemented. As a result, the money supply is reduced and interest rates are rising. Investment and consumer spendings are declining, causing incomes to decline while reducing inflation. Meanwhile, during deflation, monetary policy expands. As a result, the money supply is increasing and interest rates are decreasing. Investment and consumer spending are increasing, causing incomes to increase while reducing deflation.
Question E. Recovery in domestic economy expected to continue in 2021. However, with the recent escalation in COVID-19 cases and further rounds of containment measures, there is a highly uncertain risk in the Malaysian growth projection. Discuss your perspective on the Malaysia exports and import growth in 2021. Effect on the gross domestic product (GDP), a decline in foreign exchange rate causes a country's export prices to become relatively more expensive and lose competitiveness in the market. Declining foreign exchange rate also cause the ability of foreign countries to import goods and services. This will cause a decline in exports. But since there is a higher worldwide demand during this COVID-19 pandemic, that gives an advantage especially for electrical and electronic products, semiconductor machinery, rubber products, petroleum products, and commodity production, where it exports to all major markets, including Asia, China, United States, and many more, which it made into robust export growth in 2021. While imports increase because of the declined foreign exchange rate caused import prices to become relatively cheaper and encourage consumers to shift their demand to import goods. A decline in foreign exchange rates increase a country's ability to import. There is also a higher demand in intermediate goods, capital goods, and consumption goods. So, in conclusion, due to high export and import demand, there is an increase in exports and imports in 2021.